UP Chief Minister Yogi Adityanath is the flavor of the season. There are so many questions flying around. Have UP results settled the debate on Prime Minister Narendra Modi's successor? Is the RSS grooming Yogi Adityanath for a bigger role? Who is number two, or for that matter, number three in the ruling dispensation? As the Hindi proverb goes, jitne muh utni baatein. That's to say that everyone has one view or the other to answer these questions. In this context, you also hear everyone speculating about Yogi's impending induction into the BJP's parliamentary board, the highest decision making body of the party, where all important decisions are made, right from finalizing candidates in elections to picking up chief ministers. It's a 12-member body which has 7 members right now. You have Prime Minister Narendra Modi as one of the members. Then you have BJP President JP Janata who is heading it. Then you have 3 former BJP presidents: Amit Shah, Rajnath Singh, and Nitin Gadkari. Then you have BJP General Secretary Organization BL Santosh, and then one Chief Minister Shivraj Singh Chauhan. So these are the 7 members in the parliamentary board, and there are 5 vacancies. Venkaiah Naidu became the Vice President of India. Then Thawarchand Gehlot became a governor. And 3 leaders have passed away: Anant Kumar, Sushma Swaraj, and Arun Jaitley. The board was last constituted in 2014 by then BJP President Amit Shah. You must wonder why the top decision-making body of the BJP should have so many vacancies. Well, my answer would be, does it really matter? After all, it's Modi and Shah who take all the decisions. So why this excitement about Yogi Adityanath becoming a member of the BJP's parliamentary board? To answer that, let me take you back to 2006, when then BJP President Rajnath Singh had inducted then Gujarat CM Narendra Modi into the parliamentary board. A year later, I think it was in January 2007, Rajnath Singh dropped Modi. But in his second term as BJP President, Rajnath Singh brought back then Gujarat Chief Minister into the parliamentary board under mounting pressure from the rank and file. Modi's re-induction into the BJP's apex decision-making body turned out to be momentous. As we know, it was followed by his declaration as the BJP's prime ministerial candidate a few months later, and the rest is history. This should explain the reasons for all this excitement about Yogi Adityanath joining or not joining the BJP's high table. If and when he joins, it would be the UPCM's ascent to the national political center stage. However, that elevation in itself may not settle the debate over PM Modi's successor. As it is, there is not going to be a vacancy anytime soon. Modi is 78, he will be 72 in September this year. And he is looking good for the next 2 Lok Sabha elections at least. Yogi Adityanath has a lot to prove between now and then. He has, of course, caught the imagination of the Sangh Parivar's core base, but the fact is that he owes his second term in office to Modi to a great degree. The so-called UP model, despite other BJP CMs fancying it, is still in the making. A chief minister of a state that sends 80 members to the Lok Sabha is important, of course, but so is the person whose contribution to the BJP's phenomenal rise today is second only to Modi's, I would say. That is Home Minister Amit Shah. You must have seen the title of this video, which is about Amit Shah's number 2 and not about Modi's successor. So you must be wondering why I am beating around the bush. Well, I was just trying to set a context before coming to the main topic in this episode of Politically Correct. While so many options are being discussed as PM Modi's successor, there is hardly any when it comes to who could be the next Amit Shah in the BJP. The Home Minister is the party's chief political strategist who eats, drinks, and even breathes politics. He's never tired, he never looks tired, in fact, as he completes one mission only to embark on another. Let me give you an example. The last phase of polling in UP was on the 7th of March. You would expect Shah, who was so heavily invested in UP poll campaign, to take a break and wait for the results. No rest for Amit Shah though. The very next morning on the 8th of March, Shah was in Tripura addressing a rally to mark the 4th anniversary of the BJP-led government, headed by Biplav Dev, as we know. So there Shah was asking, in his address at the rally, he was asking people to give the BJP one more chance to make Tripura number one in development. Look at his calendar. He just don't tire and keeps everybody else on their toes. Every election is a new mission for him, from panchayat to municipal to assembly and Lok Sabha polls. Even the idea of voting on bills in parliament seems to excite him. Is there a potential successor to Amit Shah in this role? Look around, you find none. The BJP may not be bothered about this question today, for Shah is just 57, but the party should. First, India's Home Minister can't be micromanaging elections from panchayat to parliament levels. It's a full-time job. Second, howsoever brilliant a strategist may be, doing the same thing day after day and year after year takes a toll on one's imagination and creativity. It will end up making the BJP's election strategy quite predictable. The BJP may not be worried about it, but Amit Shah should be. Being Mr. Indispensable isn't always a good thing. He should know better. In 2016, when you must recall, when Anandiben Patel resigned as Gujarat Chief Minister, Amit Shah was keen on taking over. Modi was, however, not inclined to let him go. Shah was indispensable in his scheme of things at the center. So there was this parliamentary board meeting convened to choose Anandiben Patel's successor. Modi walks in and says, Amit ko chhodkar baki naam par vichar kar le. So discuss any name other than Amit Shah's, Modi said. It was reported by the Hindustan Times then, where I was then the national political editor and chief of the political bureau. We reported it there. Even today, Amit Shah remains Mr. Indispensable for the BJP. He may not want to become he may not want it to become a disadvantage the next time an opportunity for a change of role comes. The way it happened when there was an opportunity for him to go to Gujarat as the chief minister. So, as I said, being Mr. Indispensable is not always a good thing. But the problem for the BJP and Shah is that no one in the existing team of office bearers comes even close to matching his ability to understand the social structure, its fault lines, and how to create space for political and electoral maneuvers. Some old war horses who could understand all this aren't in the stable any longer. There is a large pool of wannabe poll strategists in the BJP for sure. But when they are made election in charges or co-in charges of in different states, Shah has to basically spoon feed them every step of the way. There are no original ideas coming from them. Look at the crop of chief ministers promoted by Modi and Shah since 2014. Yogi Adityanath, of course, has turned out to be a big success, but he is no election strategist. Yogi can draw crowds, but has never really worked closely with the party to understand how these crowds are converted into votes. Then you have former Maharashtra Chief Minister Devendra Fadnavis. He was also quite a find, an efficient administrator who has shown even as an opposition leader. I mean, he is a formidable opposition leader in Maharashtra today. He has kept the Uddhav Thackeray-led coalition government running for cover. But the party high command seems to be somewhat, wary of him or wary of promoting him at the center. Probably because, his unsuccessful bid in 2019 to install a government with Ajit Pawar's support had left them red-faced. Remember the early morning swearing in of Fadnavis as the chief minister and Ajit Pawar as his deputy? At that point, there was so much of a speculation because, you had all these three parties, Congress, NCP and Shiv Sena were kind of holding negotiations and they were going to stake claim to form the government when this swearing in happened. But then after Ajit Pawar was sworn in, what you call power play happened. And soon you saw Ajit Pawar actually going home. I mean, he resigned. Fadnavis had to resign, of course, because he didn't have the numbers then. And somehow, I mean, that became the reason for Fadnavis or his much speculated shift to Delhi never happening. There are some other chief ministers and leaders who may also fancy themselves Achanakyas. But as it is, it's probably Assam's Himanta Biswa Sharma who seems to fit the bill in my view. Modi, the crowd puller, and Shah, the strategist, can see a glimpse of themselves in him. He was the BJP's principal poll strategist in Assam and also the undeclared CM face in the elections last year. The mandate for him was for him entirely. It has been 11 months since he became the chief minister. Today, Sharma is a cult figure in Assam, more popular than any other BJP CMs could be in their respective states. Look at how men and women scramble to touch him. People, I was there during the election campaign, then I saw, and now I see a lot of videos coming from Assam showing the same thing. People thrust their children into his lap just to take a selfie. He obliges very indulgently. His performance as an administrator, be it in finance, health, education, or other ministries, has always been outstanding. He has been a minister since 2001, 2002, until he became the chief minister last year. Even when he was a minister in the Savan Sonowal government, he was the face of development. His ability as a political strategist was on display last week too. In the Rajya Sabha polls, the BJP and its ally, the United People's Party Liberal, UPPL, fielded candidates for 2 seats, though they were short of the requisite numbers for the second one. Both candidates won, with 8 MLAs from the opposition camp voting for BJP and UPPL candidates. Of course, Congress and the AIUDF have been accusing each other that, Congress says that AIUDF MLAs actually defected or voted for the BJP UPPL candidates. AIUDF is denying. Well, these things keep happening, but the fact is 8 of them, or Himanta Biswa Sharma managed to get the support of 8 opposition MLAs for the BJP UPPL candidates. What was equally interesting was the way the Bodoland People's Front, BPF, voted. The BJP, if you recall, the BJP had dumped the BPF to ally with the UPPL, prompting Hagrama Mohilari, the BPF chief, to join hands with the Congress in the assembly election. But on Thursday, BPF MLAs voted for the BJP UPPL candidates. I mean, that's what you call Sharma magic. So the other day, there was this picture on the front pages of newspapers. I think it was last week only. The picture showed Himanta Biswa Sharma and his Meghalaya counterpart, Conrad Sangma, shaking hands with a smiling Amit Shah standing in the middle. The 2 chief ministers were holding copies of a pact, resolving their dispute in 6 of the 12 points in border areas. I mean, this dispute has been festering for about 5 decades. And they have not solved the entire thing, but half of the work is done. What those smiling faces that I'm talking about on the front pages of the newspapers, what those smiling faces didn't reflect was the fact that the BJP recently delivered a snub to Conrad Sangma's National People's Party in Manipur. I think the last episode I spoke about this. When the Biren Singh government took oath again for the second time, the NPP was kept out of the government, despite the fact that NPP had extended support to it. And yet, you see this bonhomie between Himanta Biswa Sharma and Conrad Sangma. And you'd expect that, in Meghalaya, for instance, the BJP has 2 MLAs. One of them is a minister. So after this snub in Manipur, you would expect Conrad Sangma to react. But Sangma didn't. And there is a reason for this. Sharma holds the key to Conrad Sangma-led government. He was the one who forced a multi-party alliance comprising 5 parties after the Congress emerged as the single largest party in the 2018 election. Sharma was the architect of Conrad Sangma government. That's not just about Meghalaya. I mean, Himanta Biswa Sharma is credited with many other politically fascinating exploits in the Northeast, I would say. Installing the first BJP Chief Minister of Arunachal Pradesh in 2017. If you recall, I mean, he got Chief Minister Pema Khandu and 33 other MLAs who were in the People's Party of Arunachal then. He got all of them to switch their loyalty, I mean, overnight. So, you must have heard, like within 3 months, Pema Khandu, who was in the Congress, then he went to PPA, and then he was the CM of the PPA. And from there, he went on to become the Chief Minister of Arunachal Pradesh. So, BJP came to power in Arunachal Pradesh without having got the mandate from the people. And of course, later on, as the BJP Chief Minister, he got a renewed mandate. Then it was Himanta Biswa Sharma who was instrumental in making Nagaland opposition mukt. So as it is, I mean, look at Himanta Biswa Sharma's exploits. I mean, in entire Northeast, as NIDA convener, I mean, he's the one who is kind of stitching alliances together in different states. Amit Shah must be very proud of him because Sharma happens to be his confidante and the point person in the Northeast. As it is, Amit Shah does not need to look for a successor anytime soon. He is just 57. Nor would the Assam CM be interested in coming to Delhi on any assignment in near future. But Himanta Biswa Sharma is certainly showing a lot of potential to step into Amit Shah's shoes sometime in future. For now, the BJP's chief poll strategist and the Home Minister may consider bringing the Assam CM to the high table we are talking about. Everybody is talking about the high table, BJP's high table, that is Parliamentary board. So maybe Himanta Biswa Sharma, it's not time Himanta Biswa Sharma to come to Delhi, but he can of course join the highest decision-making body of the party and take part or make his contributions there. That's all from me in this episode of Politically Correct. Thanks for watching.